years ago, we offered a block of the month, and this was called Blooming Beauty. It was by Marilyn Foreman, and our customers fell in love with that quilt. It sold out very rapidly, and we had promised in that introduction video that we would film supporting video, and Tammy did an amazing job. She covered so many things in there because there's a lot going on in this quilt, and she gave you so many tips and techniques. We actually never released that footage to the public because that had sold out. Well, guess what? This quilt is back now, and so many people are like, oh my gosh, this quilt. We think it's going to probably sell out again. However, we know there's a lot of makers out there, whether you're going to be using these fabrics or maybe picking up the pattern and choosing your own fabrics, would love to see that content. So we're going to kind of crack open that vault. If you were not in that block a month program before, you never got to see this incredible footage. And we all know Tammy is a phenomenal instructor. So if you want to see how it does that all go together, how do all of these rulers work and why are they important, check out this video. Pace yourself. It's longer. It's even chaptered. We have things from state stitches and a star block to making half square triangles, fast flying geese made with the ultimate flying geese tool, assembling, final assembly, hourglass, stars, and more. So much inside this video is incredible. Be sure to check that out. And if you missed out on Blooming Beauties before, head to that website. You are looking for the Blooming Beauties block of the month. This collection happens to be called Always and Forever by Renee Nanaman for Andover Fabrics. And without delay, here's Tammy to talk you through and really unpack how you can make this heirloom quilt for yourself or as an incredible gift for someone that would just be overwhelmed with receiving something of this caliber. So here's Tammy to talk you through how this quilt is made.
Hi everyone, it's Tammy with Shabby Fabrics. I am here today to show you some of my tips and techniques for sewing the elements in the Blooming Beauty block of the month. This is such a beautiful quilt. This quilt looks so much more difficult than it really is. You are going to be amazed when you see how simple this quilt really is. There are basically 3 elements that make up this quilt. We're looking at an hourglass block right here. You have a flying geese block, which is done on these stars, right? And you have half square triangles. How simple is that? That's all you need to do to make this incredible quilt. Setting this quilt on point and trying to get everything lined up right, I do recommend that you have a design wall. This is a Gypsy Quilter design wall. This is one that we use upstairs in the sewing studio every day. If you don't have one, you might want to think about picking up a design wall for laying out all of your blocks once you get this together. Let's talk a little bit about what you're going to get every month. You're going to receive your kit, all your fabrics that you need for that month. Blooming Beauty Block 1. So this is going to be your pattern. You're going to get this from us at Shabby Fabrics. We have special cutting instructions to make it much easier and simple for you to follow and understand. Everything is in full color. Let's look at this QR code right here. That code goes straight to this video. Every month there is a QR code and it's going to bring you to this video. So if you're just looking for the part when I talk about flying geese, you don't have to watch this entire video or try to remember where it is. Just scan the code, go to the chapter, you're right there to flying geese. Everything was marked in this video, all right? You've got piecing instructions are also included along with pressing instructions. Make your required elements, set them in a very safe place, and wait for month 2. All right? So let's take a look at month 1. Month 1 is this very cool hourglass block. Let's look at how those are created. So I'm going to start with my squares. So I've got a pink and a white, or a cream, and a red and a cream. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is make half square triangles out of these. So I've done a little bit of work ahead of time because that just seemed to be the simplest thing to do. All right, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take one of your cream squares, you're going to take a friction pen and draw a line corner to corner on the back, just like this. We've all done this, right? And then you're going to layer it with your square and pin. You see how I pin these? I like to pin a couple of times when these squares are so big. I definitely am going to use my Clover extra fine patchwork pins throughout this video. I love these pins. They're so nice to use. Just like this. Now you're going to sew a 1/4 inch on either side of the line. So sometimes that gets difficult. When you're trying to sew a 1/4 inch on either side, if you're not quite sure where that is, you're guessing. I find it much faster to sew on a line. So I'm going to introduce you to a seam guide. This is by Creative Grids. It's a wonderful tool. So I'm going to line this up so that in this groove, you can see the point of my square here and the point of my square here. I now know this tool is perfectly centered on this square. Now, I'm just going to follow the tool just like this on either side. There we go. Now I have a perfect 1/4 inch on either side of that line. Way easier to follow. I think it's faster too to sew on a line than it is to try and guess where that is. All right. So we would take this to machine and sew right on those lines. All right. When we get that done, we are now going to cut these apart. Now I'm going to cut it apart in the very center. Just like that. Okay. And I'm going to press this to the pink. Okay. So let's see. My iron's heated up. All right, I have one pink and I need one red. So let's go ahead and cut one of these apart and grab a red square. You need one of each to make an hourglass block. Now I'm not going to trim these squares up right now. I'm just going to leave them the size that they are. I find that leaving these squares oversized throughout this process and just trimming up at the end, that generally works out better for me. All right, so now let's look at how do I make an hourglass block with these. Well, I'm going to turn these squares like this so my whites are opposite, and I'm going to stack these. Whoops, let me grab that seam allowance really quick. There we go. Okay, I'm going to stack these on top of each other. So my white is here, my white is here, and when I open this up like this, there's your hourglass block right there. Okay, so let's nest these seams. That's why I press this one to the pink and this one to the red. So I can now nest these together, and I can feel these seams, they are locking straight together. All right, so we're going to put a pin in here. I'm going to hold those seams. They need to be held right there. All right, that works. So I'm going to sew in the middle. So I'm going to take my seam guide, or if you don't have a seam guide, you're just going to draw the line corner to corner, just like this. Okay, and you're going to sew a 1/4 inch on either side of this line. If you have a seam guide, we're going to put this on here. Let's turn that around. That's easier. Okay, there we go. So now I'm just going to stitch on these lines. So let's go do that. All right. All right, so let's take our pins out. Now, before I cut this, I am going to check this. I just want to make darn sure I nailed that corner or this intersection right there. Look at that. That is beautiful. Let's look at the other one. Should be the same. Yep, looks good. All right, let's go ahead and cut this in half. Okay. All right, I'm going to take this back to the iron, set my seam, and now I'm going to press the seam open. All right. Just like this. This little Panasonic iron works really well for that. This tip just slides right along and opens that seam right up like I need it to. All right, I'm going to press it one more time from the top, being careful not to stretch out my points. All right, so now let's trim this up. To do that, I'm going to use a Creative Grids 4.5 by 4.5 inch square ruler. I like this little ruler. I'm also going to use the spinning mat, a rotating mat. I'm going to kind of give myself a little real estate here. Okay. So when I'm laying this ruler on here, the first thing I'm going to line up is this line right here. The 45-degree angle is right on my block. The next thing I'm looking at is I'm looking at my points. Like right here, you can see this square is in the point. This one's really close. This one, super close. This one, oh, he's off a little bit. I'm just going to adjust my fabric a little bit. See, I'm just pulling on this little tail to make that corner be right in that point. Oh, I like all 4 of those. I think that's where I'm going to cut it. I like it. Here we go. 1. Now I'm going to hold this ruler in the center as I turn because I don't want my ruler to move. I have it set exactly where I want it. Let's turn again. And one more time. All right, let's see what we got. Perfect. That's exactly what I want. Okay, so that is how we're going to make an hourglass block. And you're going to make, this is month 1 right here. All right, so you're going to make the required number, set them in a safe place, and move on. When month 2 comes, I believe you're making more hourglass blocks in month 2. I'm now going to jump ahead to month 3 where we're doing some half square triangles. All right, so I'm going to clear this away and I'll be right back. All right, so half square triangles, this is month 3. I'm going to take my 2 squares. I have a cream and a pink, or a cream and a darker cream. You have, I believe, 5 different varieties of half square triangles that you're making. I'm going to turn my cream square over, and again, you're going to draw your line corner to corner on this. Now you can, again, just draw your line or use your seam guide. It's entirely up to you, whichever you find easier to do. I like sewing on a line. All right. And we're going to stack our squares straight on top of each other. You guys saw me do this for the hourglass blocks. Put a couple pins in here and go to the sewing machine. All right. So on your line or 1/4 inch away. And this is what I have. All right. So now I'm going to cut this apart. 2 half square triangles. Take it to the iron. And I'm going to press this with the pink side up because I'm going to press towards the pink. So I'm just picking the darker fabric to press to, just like this. Perfect. All right. And again, I'm going to trim this out to 4.5 by 4.5. So I've got my ruler here. We're going to lay this on here. You can see I don't have a lot to trim, do I? But I'm lining up that 45-degree angle exactly with my half square triangle here. And I'm just going to spin this mat all the way around and just take off that little tiny bit all around it, just like that. Now I know I have a perfect 4.5-inch square, half square triangle. All right, so you're going to make the required number and then all the other varieties, and then again, set them aside and continue with the next month. All right, so I'll see you back here in just a minute. Okay, so after you get your half square triangles completed, you're going to grab all of your hourglass blocks from their safe place, and you are going to lay this quilt out. You're going to lay out the very center of it. And I'm going to show you the layout guide that we have given you right here in your pattern, in the center of your pattern. You're then going to trim all the way around. Okay, so you have some setting triangles that you're adding in here, and that's how you get something on point. Let's take a look at this. You are assembling this right here, this very large center. All right, so that's all done with hourglass blocks and half square triangles. All right, it's beautiful. So once you get that done, you're going to trim a 1/4 inch right here. We give you a really nice diagram on how to do that on the edges of your quilt. And then stay stitch on all 4 sides to stabilize your quilt, because now you've got bias edges, you've got all these seams are coming together. You're going to want to stay stitch on that. Now to stay stitch, you're going to stitch 1/8 of an inch from the side of the quilt with a longer basting stitch. And if you start to sew and you see your sewing machine is gathering this up, loosen your tension. Loosen your tension all the way back until you can sew and it doesn't gather anything up. All right? Stitch all the way around, fold it up neatly, or show it off. Hang it up and look what I did. And put it aside for the next month. All right? I'll see you in a minute and we'll do some stars. All right, welcome back. This is month 5, and now we're going to make a star in a star block. I'm going to show you which one I'm going to do with you on camera. It's this one right here. Isn't that beautiful? This whole thing is a block, and then you've got your star in a star. Very pretty. All right, so let's take a look on how we do that. All right, I'm going to start with these blocks right here. Okay, so this is for flying geese. This is the center of my star. Let's put him aside. These are my block corners around my star. Let's look at how to make that star. We're going to use fast flying geese is the method that we're using. And I'm going to show you a creative grids tool to trim that up. And I'm also going to trim one up using a regular ruler if you do not have the Ultimate Flying Geese tool. All right, let's look at how we do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brown squares and I'm going to draw a line on the back of all of them. Or you can draw your other lines with your seam guide, right? If you want to sew on the line, because I'm going to have to sew a 1/4 inch on either side of this. So otherwise, I'm actually using this tool, the seam guide, like this on the back of these squares. All right? I'm going to do this one really quick, and then I'll show you how to put these on your square. There we go. All right. So we're going to lay this in one corner, just like this. This one is in the opposite corner. And you can see how my sewing lines all line up? That's exactly what I want. So I'm going to pin these squares in place because I don't want them to move. I want them to stay right here. So let's pin these on just like this. All right, the last thing I'm going to do before I go to the sewing machine is I want you to look at this overlap right here between these squares. You see how they overlap by quite a bit here in the center? I'm going to take a small pair of scissors. I'm going to put this point is on top. I'm going to hold on to it and take my scissors and cut from here to here. You ready? Just like that. Discard these little pieces. There we go. My sewing lines still line up, which is what I want. So we take this to the machine and sew on the line down and back. All right, here's what that looks like. Right here. Okay, so I've sewn a 1/4 inch on either side of that line. Let's take our pins out. All right, and let's actually cut this on that line. All right, now we can take this to the ironing mat. And I'm going to set my seam and flip these corners right up, just like that. All right. Okay, now it looks a little crazy, doesn't it? So now I'm going to take another square that we have our line on. Like this. All right, and I'm going to set this in this corner now, just like this. I'm going to pin this on here. Just like that. All right, now I'm going to sew on the lines. All right, let me grab mine. And this is what this looks like, just like that. Okay, so let's remove the pins. And now let's trim this out. Cut it in half, take it to the ironing board, and press your triangles out. Look at that little flying geese. So clever. This is such a clever way to make flying geese. You don't waste any fabric. We could do this with sew and flip, where you have a rectangle, you're drawing a line on the back, you're sewing, and then cutting away a pile of fabric by the time you get done with all these. I just don't like wasting fabric. This is such a great way and quick. This is fast and easy. All right, so now I need to square this. I need to square these up. So let's take a look at our pattern. This is the pattern that I'm following. This is month 5. All right, and we are going to trim these up to 2 by 3.5. All right, important number. All right, so let's take a look at a 2.5 by 12.5 inch ruler. And on this ruler, I see it has 2 45-degree lines that come together. I like that. I'm going to set that right here. Okay, so now I can cut this knowing that I'm cutting this exactly 1/4 inch away from the tip of this flying geese. Because I need to leave that 1/4 inch so when we put them into our star, we don't lose our points. Okay, let's look at that. Yeah, that looks good. And now my measurement was 2 inches. 2 inches by 3.5. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this ruler over and I'm going to use this line because this is 2 inches, right? We're going to cut this to 2 inches. I know, you guys just watch me cut those points right off, right? You're thinking, what is she doing? Well, 2 inches, that's what my measurement is. Now I have to cut it 3.5 inches, my length. Now it gets a little trickier. So I have 3.5 inches on this ruler. Now I need to take my ruler and center my 3.5 inch mark I like that. I can see this number is in my way here. You know what? I have a 3.5 inch square. Let's see if this works a little bit better. Yeah, that's a little bit better. 3.5 inch square. So now I'm centering this ruler between these points right here because I want these to be perfect points on the side. Rotary cutter, here you are. I'm going to cut on each side of this now. There we go. All right. So now I have a flying geese that is 2 inches by 3.5 inches. That's a lot of steps, right? Okay. Let me show you my favorite way of doing this. Here, you can go up here with your friends. I'm going to use the Ultimate Flying Geese tool. This tool is amazing. First of all, this tool has many different sizes of flying geese, and you can see your finished sizes right here. I'm going to be using C. Remember, this is a finished size on this ruler. So if I'm cutting this flying geese to 2 by 3.5, my finished size is a 1/2 inch smaller on both sides of that, right? So it's going to be 1.5 by 3. That is my finished size of this when it's sewn into this quilt. So I want to find 1.5 by 3, which is letter C. It's going to tell me how to cut my block. So let's say you don't have a pattern, you just want to make a bunch of flying geese. Here it is. It tells you to cut one large square, which is exactly this square. That's what we started with right here, a 4 3/4 inch square. And I cut 4 2 3/4 inch brown squares. That's what these were. Okay, that's what this is. So it tells me exactly how to cut my flying geese. You never lose your cutting instructions. That's really smart, isn't it? All right, so now once we have these made, let's take a look at the trim features on this tool. So the first one we're going to do is trim number 1. Always start with number 1. I think it's a good place to start. Remember, we're on letter C. So I'm going to lay this on my flying geese, and I can see this C line right here. It's the dashed line. I'm going to line that up with these two, with the V in my flying geese. You see how that lines up just like that? That is perfect. See that? So now I'm ready to cut. I'm ready to pick up a rotary cutter. So I'm going to cut this side and the top all together. All right? 1, rotate, and cut again. All right? Now I'm going to rotate one more time and slide my tool down. Do you see what's up now? Trim 2. That's the second trim. So now I'm again following C. This time my C makes a perfect triangle. It actually outlines my entire flying geese. Look at that. You see that? I know exactly where this ruler goes to trim this perfectly. So I'm already ready to cut. I can cut this side, turn my mat, and cut the bottom. All right? And now I have a perfectly trimmed flying geese in 2 motions rather than 4 motions, which it took me with a regular ruler. It really does save a lot of time. And you can see they're exactly the same size. Okay, so I need 4 flying geese, and I have made the other 2 ahead of time. So now I can actually assemble my star block. So I have this. I have my 2 stars like this. There we go. And my 4 cornerstones, just like that. That is my center star, right? Okay. So I put him together ahead of time. Let's take a look at how I press that. And these pressing instructions are in your pattern, all right? So I pressed to my cornerstones. I pressed the center row to the center square, this one to the cornerstones. So when I put these together, do you see how these nested perfectly? And then I press these last two seams open because I want this to lay flat. You can see everything nested perfectly. All my points are here. Okay. All right, so that's how you do your center star. So let's take a look at the great big star. Okay, so for that, we're going to start with a square this big and 4 other squares. Again, we're going to draw our lines on the back, and we're going to get these on here and sew on the lines exactly the same way that I just did, right? Let me draw a line corner to corner so that's a good visual. You can see that. This is what that's going to look like, right? You sew a 1/4 inch on either side of those, get your pins in there, cut it apart, and I have flying geese like this. All right, now I'm going to take my seam guide and I'm going to put this on here, lining up my corner. And I'm going to go ahead and draw a line to sew on. Okay, you see how I can make this one work? I'm just going to slide it down and do the other side. They do have a much larger seam guide. It's a 15-inch one. It's a big one. But if you only have a small one, works just fine, just like that. All right, so I'm going to trim out my points, and I'm going to go ahead to the machine and go ahead and sew this. So I will see you at the sewing machine. Okay, so let's go ahead and sew this. Here we go. Okay, so let's go ahead and pull our pins, cut this in half, and press one of these. These are big, big flying geese. Oh, they're so pretty though. I love how these two pinks come together. This is a beautiful block. All right, we'll put this one on here. I'll go sew that really quick. When I come back, we'll cut this apart and trim this one up. All right, so let's get the pins out. Let's cut this in half. And let's square a block up. And I actually press 2 of them. So I'm going to show you how to do this if you do not have the Creative Grids Ultimate Flying Geese tool. All right, I think that's important that I show you that. Okay, so we need to trim these blocks to a 3.5 by 6.5 inch. Okay, that's unfinished sizes. So I have a 4.5 by 8.5 inch ruler I'm going to use. So again, I'm looking for the cross to cut right here. I'm lining up the cross with my flying geese, right? The 45-degree angles. I'm going to turn this way so I can cut a 1/4 inch above my point. Okay, so when I sew this into the quilt, I'll have my point. All right, so I believe my measurement was 3.5. So I'm going to use 3.5. I have half, 1.5, 2.5, 3.5. So now I'm going to trim my block to 3.5, just like this. Okay. All right, now I have to trim it to 6.5. All right, so let's look where 6.5 is. It's right here. So now I need to All right, so what I'm doing is I am lining up, again, I lined up this point right here on this corner of my ruler, and I can see my 6.5 mark is right here. So now I can trim this side confidently and know that I'm not gonna mess up this point. And now to trim this side, I'm just simply gonna slide my ruler over so it's 6.5 by 3.5. Do you see how that lays in there just like that? There's the footprint of my block. And now I can trim this side. Okay? All right. That's how we trim it using a regular ruler. Let's do it using the Creative Grids Flying Geese tool. All right, so I'm going to use, remember I was talking about finished size and unfinished size. You're going to use a 3x6 now, right? Which is your finished size. This is an F, letter F, and that is the white line right here. Okay, so let's look at that. Line this up, and I can trim two sides. 1, 2. I'm going to turn this around. I'm going to slide my ruler down. Again, I have my white line that I know is F. Look how nice that lines up. Look how quick that is. And I can trim the other side and the top, just like that. There it is. And we have 2 flying geese. All right? All right, so let's look at what we do with these 4 flying geese. I have 4 of them right here. All right, so the star, remember, is the center. We'll just build this right here. Star is the center. And I have this one and this one. So this block should finish to 6.5. I'm sorry, it will finish to 6. Right now it's 6.5. There we go. That's the right way to say that. All right, there it is, right? And now I have my pink for my cornerstones. And we're going to put this together just like this, right? So I have pressed these seams open. Now that's different. The last time when I made this, remember I pressed to my cornerstone. This time I pressed this open. And I'm going to tell you why. It's because when I sew this to this, I have a point here and I have 2 points here. I already know I'm going to have to press that seam open to get those points to sharpen and lay flat. Therefore, we press this one open so that it's much easier to line them up. All right, so let's go sew that. It does not matter which side you have up. You're still going to be sewing a blind point, right? You're blind on that other side. You don't know where that point is. I know where it is, but I'm not going to be able to watch it as I'm sewing it. So I'm just going to pin it to make sure it stays where I want it to stay. But I know I've trimmed it with my ruler, so I know confidently that I'm going to hit that point at 1/4 inch. All right? Okay, let's take this to the machine and sew this. All right, so it's very important that I follow 1/4 inch. If you need help with 1/4 inch, I recommend a guideline seam guide. And I'm going to put this on. I know where my 1/4 inch on the sewing machine is, this little mark right here on my stitch plate. I'm going to mark that right there. That is my 1/4 inch. So now I can just run my fabric right next to that and I will hit my 1/4 inch. These are amazing little tools to use to help you sew more accurately. All right, so let's take our pins out and see how we did. Oh, look at that. Every one of my points is perfect. And you saw me do it. All right, so let's press this out. So again, I told you I was going to press this open. So I set my seam. And now I'm just going to let that iron help me and press that seam open. I am putting some pressure on this. I want this to definitely press flat. Okay, so I'll do the other side. Same way. Open these up and press that seam open. I'm going to press that again from the top just so it knows I mean it, and I really want it to lay flat. There we go. Okay, perfect. There is my center. All right, so now we're just going to attach these to here. This is my point, but I also have 2 points over here. Yep, you guessed it. I'm going to turn this around backwards. I'm going to keep my eyes on 2 points versus 1, right? So now my seams are pressed open. They're not going to nest, but what you're going to do is you're going to stack them perfectly on top of each other, just like that. Notice where I'm starting to pin on these seams. I'm ignoring the rest of the block right now. This corner, as long as I'm here, I'll do him next. All right, let's do this other seam over here. Oh, I've got a thread. And grab my scissors. Get that thread out of the way. Sometimes those little threads will block your view of where your seam is actually at. Okay. Pin the other side. All right, I'm going to pin this corner where I'm going to start. There we go. All right. This fits nicely. I'm not really pulling on this. You can see it fits very nicely. I'm going to take this center seam and pin that first. And I'm going to put another pin on both of these points right here, because I already know sometimes when you get to this, the machine starts to go, hey, there's too many thicknesses here, and it doesn't want to go over that smoothly. I'm going to put a pin here just to remind those seams I want you to lay flat. All right, so this is how I'm pinning this. I'm going to sew 1/4 inch from here to here. I'm going to pin the other side and do them both at the same time when I'm over there. So I'll see you at the machine in just a minute. All right, so I'm still going to use my little 1/4 inch guide that I already put on there. I'm going to leave him there. I like that. That definitely helped me get that perfect 1/4 inch. All right, let's take our pins out and check those points. I had a lot of pins in that one. But I tell you, I don't think I've ever been sorry I've put in too many pins. Don't be afraid to put in more pins. If you think you need a pin, take 2 seconds to put it in. Let's take a look. Wow. These intersections are perfect. That's what I'm looking for. These points are there. These points. Yeah, this looks great. I love this block. All right, so now our final seam, you guessed it, we're going to press that open. Okay, and that is how we make a star in a star. Look at that beautiful block. I love it. I absolutely love it. Seams are open here and here, 2 seams here, and that's how you do that block. All right, so the next couple of months, that's what you're gonna do, and I'll be back to teach the last block in just a minute. All right, I'm back. Welcome to month 9. Good job, you are almost done. How amazing is that, right? You must have a huge stack of blocks. You've got your centers done. Let's take a look at the block we're going to do today. This is a little star with an hourglass for a center rather than just a plain square for a center. The other two stars just have plain squares. I thought I would show you this hourglass block right here, and it's turned on point. So this is the bottom of it right here, but it's actually turned on point in the quilt. All right, so let's take a look at that. So again, we're going to start with the hourglass. All right, so remember when we do an hourglass, that was way back at the beginning, right? We have our two squares. We're going to make half square triangles, right? So we have two squares, right sides together. Draw your line, sew on either side of your line, just like this. And now we're going to trim on the line. Okay, I'm going to press toward the darker fabric. In this case, it's that dark brown. All right. Press to your dark brown and do that twice. All right. Now this hourglass is different because it only has two colors in it. The other one we did in the beginning had three colors. In fact, I think I still have him on the table. I do. You see how these had three different fabrics in them? These hourglass blocks only have two fabrics, just like this. So you only make a set of your triangles, half square triangles, and then we're going to immediately turn them just like this. Remember how we nested our seams? And we draw our line opposite this seam, just like this. Nest these together. Don't forget to pin this. You really don't want to forget your pins. I don't know if these would stay together or not, but I don't trust them. I know nested seams. They like pins. All right, and we'd sew 1/4 inch on either side of the line. Remember again, if you want to sew on that line, use your seam guide. Use your seam guide, mark that line on either side like this, and sew on the line instead of next to it. All right, okay, I've done that ahead of time for you. Just like this. All right, take out my pins. Let's trim this. Just like that. Let's take a look. Beautiful. All right, we'll just take one of these to the iron. And again, remember we press this seam open. The last seam is always pressed open on these. That's just the way we do it. You could do it, if you have a better way of pressing this seam, you go right ahead and use that method, all right? We find that pressing them open helps them stay flat. That's what I'm looking for, is flat, just like that. You see how that's not puffy? All right, now this one, remember we trimmed our other blocks to 4.5. All right, so I'm going to use a 3.5 inch square ruler by Creative Grids. First thing I'm going to do is I line up this diagonal right here in the center. And again, remember we're looking at our points, and I'm making sure that these points all hit exactly where I want them to. And if they don't, we just kind of fuss it a little bit. Fuss your fabric a little bit. Be the boss of your fabric. I like that. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start cutting. And I know I'm cutting a little bit more off than what we did on the last one. The last one, we cut barely anything off. This one, we're cutting off a lot more. Perfect. All right, so now I have a 3.5 inch hourglass block. All right, let's set him aside. All right, let's look at the flying geese that go around this. Now these flying geese, I definitely want you to note that this is a directional fabric. And if you look at the block that we sewed, you can see that if this is the bottom of the block, all of this fabric goes in the same direction. Now, if that's important to you, I'm going to show you how I did that. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our square and we're going to turn it over. It is right side up. Remember that, right side up. And I'm going to draw the line, the upper left to the lower right on 2 squares. Just like that, okay? These now go on my brown square, and I'm laying them straight on here, so my fabric is right side up. You see that? The direction of the fabric is right side up. I have the wrong side of the fabric, but my fans are going up. That's what I want to say. All right, I'm going to pin this on here like this and like this. You remember how we did this, right? You guys have had lots of practice making flying geese. Just like that. All right, and now I need to trim this overlap right here. So again, my finger holds those tight and take that off. Okay? All right, I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch on either side of that. And I have done that ahead of time right here. Okay? All right. Let's cut this apart, and I want you to see what this looks like. And we will go ahead and press towards the fan fabric. And the other one. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to take these. Remember how I turned this over and I went from the upper left to the lower right? I'm going to reverse that this time. I'm going to go from the upper right to the lower left. You can see my fabric is laid on my table exactly the same way. My fans are pointing up. All right, so let's take a friction pen and draw that line on here. It has to go the opposite direction. I'm going to show you why. Because now, when I put this on here, corner to corner, what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this and I'm going to audition this. Do you see how that's not right? These fans are going this way. These fans are going this way. Turn it over. Now what do we have? Ha! Voila! I love that. These fans are going this way. So now these fans should be completely upside down. And they are. Look at that. You see that? Oh, I know that's a good place for this one. So let's pin it quick. And you do exactly the same thing on this one. Okay, again, the direction of your line is from the upper right to the lower left this time. So your lines are opposite. And you know, I think this tip is really important on how to do this. So I did take the time to write out a paragraph about how I did this. It's called a maker's tip, and that is included in your pattern. Okay, so once I get that sewn, now I'm just going to trim right in the center. Let's take our pins out first. So my ruler will go in there. Oh, I've got pieces everywhere, don't I? There we go. All right, let's see what we've got. Yep, those fans are going right. These fans are up. Perfect. Here we go. Oh, I love it when the directional fabric all works out right in my block. All right, so let's take a look at the other two that I've got. I trimmed these up ahead of time as I wanted to show you how this goes together. All right, you see how all 4 of these are going the correct direction? I can verify that. And then this is in the center. All right, so I'm going to trim these up 2 by 3.5. So if you missed me doing that with a regular ruler and you do not have the Ultimate Flying Geese tool, you need to refer back to month 5. That is where I show you how to do this with 2 different tools. I used a regular ruler and the Flying Geese tool. I'm only going to show you the Flying Geese tool for these last 2. All right? Okay, so I'm using C. That is my line. Oh, that's beautiful. So I have my Diagonal line is exactly on here. This is C. Everything is lining up. And I know I can trim the top and the side just like this. Perfect. All right, spin it around, go to trim 2, and now I'm also going to use the C lines, which are my dash lines. That is perfect. And I know, see my little numbers right here? They're just confirming, yes, I'm doing this correct. 1.5 by 3. It's a 2 by 3.5. Remember, these are finished sizes, not unfinished. I know that's really confusing. Okay, here and here. All right. Okay, I'm going to trim this last one up, and I will see you in a minute, and we'll go sew this block together. All right, so we're ready to put our block together. So I have my hourglass, and I'm going to just double check my pattern and make sure it's correct, and it is this way up, this side up. All right, now I'm looking at my little fans, and that's going to determine where they belong on the block. This one's at the top because the fans are all going up, remember. This one is at the bottom. This one is on my right side, and this one is on my left, just like that. And I have my 4 cornerstones just like this. That's awesome. I love that. Okay, so I'm going to put this together very similar to how I put that other one together, and you'll watch me do it. Here we go. Let's put our cornerstones on first, just like this. Our block corners will go on first. And then this one is going to fold into here. And I am going to put a pin in this one. This one goes to here. We'll put a pin in this. A lot of times I'll pin an entire block like this before I even go to the sewing machine, so that I can just sit there and sew everything all at once, come back, press it, reassemble it, and then put in my 2 final seams, just to make sure that I didn't flip something upside down. But I know if I'm doing this, I know that I'm pinning stuff as I go. I'm not going to get confused, and I'm not going to forget where I'm at. All right. I will see you at the sewing machine. Okay, so I'm going to start chain piecing these. So I'm going to sew this, and then I'm going to pick up these and sew them, cut this off, bring it around, sew this, cut these off, bring them around, and sew those. All right, here we go. All right, now you understand why I chain pieced all those together and why I took the time to pin all of those pieces on there. All right, so let's go ahead and get our pins out. All right, and let's take all of this to the ironing mat and get this pressed. All right, so let's press our block corners out, just like this. And this one, same thing. All right, that leads us to this piece. I'm going to heat that seam up, turn it over, and I'm going to press to my hourglass, just like this. Now, the reason I went to the hourglass is, one, I want to see this point right here. Let's heat this one up, and let's do exactly the same thing where I'm going towards that. There we go. Perfect. All right, so now my fans are going up. I'm going to reassemble this block. Fans are up. This one, fans are up. All right, I'm confirming that everything is exactly where it's supposed to be. I'm going to assemble this block now. Now these seams are going to nest right here. That is awesome. I love that. I'm going to pin this. I'm going to go ahead and pin the end just so these 2 points don't walk away from each other. Let's do this one is next. All right, and the last one is in the center. That will be just fine. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pin this one on, and I will see you at the sewing machine. All right, let's get our pins out and see what our block looks like. Oh, that looks great. I love that. Okay, so I'm now going to press these seams open. All right. All right, and that is your finished block right there. Okay, so once you have all of your stars done on the outside, I'm just going to talk to you about putting this quilt together. So you have an assembly diagram in the center. This is month 10. You're going to get all of your finishing so that you're going to cut your borders. You're going to cut all of this stuff. QR code to go to the video. If you forgot how to make stars or something and you need to get back here, you can. All right, so we're making these large triangles that are going onto your center, just like that, and then putting your borders on. Now your borders are not cut to an exact size. They are left longer than you need. So be very careful when you're putting your borders on. I would find the center of your border and make sure that that's right on the center. Get that laid on there perfectly and sew it with the border towards the sewing machine. That way you can watch all of these points and all of this bias is not next to the feed dogs, which could pull it and distort it. All right, so the borders next to the feed dogs, your triangles are face up to you. Go ahead and get your borders on, trim them, next set, next set, next set. All right, and just keep adding all your borders. And you will have a beautiful quilt that is going to last forever. I think all of the grandkids are going to be fighting over this one. I love this quilt. I think you're going to love it as well. Congratulations, you've made it to the end, and I will see you next time on a Shabby Fabrics tutorial.